So now that's, look at the difference, look at the consistency, look how wet it is. Look how much water's in there, right? We've gone from dry to wet, just like that, by adding 5 tablespoons of salt. Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and I've got more zucchini than I know what to do with. And if you grow zucchini, if you grow as much as I do, you tend to get to that point in the season where you got so much you can't give it away. So what I tend to do with my zucchini, I mean, I use it every way I can, but there's basically more than I can deal with. So I turn it into zucchini relish, right? I've got this kind of zucchini relish that I use the green zucchini to make. And then where is that? It's my wife's favorite. I make golden zucchini with the yellow ones. But today I'm going to do the, whoops, I'm going to do the green one, right? Because that's just what I've got to work with today, right? So in another day or two, I'll have enough of these to do a batch of the golden zucchini. But anyway, the recipe is the same regardless of what kind of zucchini you use. Anyway, let me, lots of people have asked, I've mentioned this in videos and people have asked me. So let me read off the ingredients. I'll put them up on the screen here. And any one of these, you can adjust it up or down a little bit, right, depending on your taste. So, I mean, this tends to work for my taste. Zucchini relish. It's called sweet zucchini relish. These are the proportions I use. I'm happy with it. If there's a little bit of background noise, it's because I got the air conditioning on. If I didn't have the air conditioning on, I would die in the process of making this video. It's 32 degrees outside, which to some people isn't that big a deal, but to a fragile Canadian like myself, that's just too hot. So I've got the AC on. So 13 cups of shredded unpeeled zucchini, 4 cups chopped onion, 5 tablespoons of pickling salt, 1 red bell pepper, 1 green bell pepper, optional. Even the peppers are optional, okay? I'm going to mention what stuff's optional. It's good flavor, and certainly if you've got green relish or the yellow relish, the red pepper just gives a nice contrast. It makes the relish look really nice and adds a bit of sweetness. Okay, so 1 red bell pepper, 1 green bell pepper, 6 cups of white sugar, 2 1/2 cups of white vinegar, 1 tablespoon of cornstarch, 3/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, 3/4 teaspoon of ground turmeric, 1 1/2 teaspoons of celery seed, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. Now, all those spices, you can dial it up or dial it down a little bit depending on your taste, but I find this works out fine. And the sugar, you can dial it up or dial that down, but if you're dialing it down, just bear in mind that sugar helps preserve stuff. So as you dial your sugar down, you begin to run the risk of it not storing as well, right? This is eventually this is going to be stored in a vacuum sealed jar like this, right? This is from 2019, it's totally fine. The amount of sugar is a preservative. So is salt, so is vinegar. So if I was you, I would use the amount of sugar, use the amount of vinegar, use the amount of salt I'm suggesting. Salt, vinegar, sugar, all preservatives. If you're going to reduce the sugar, you got to add vinegar. Things like that, right? Because those are the things that help preserve stuff. This part of the video, we're going to deal with step 1. We have to take the zucchini and the onions and shred them up and put them in a brine overnight. We got to shred all this stuff. Step 1 is you're going to shred your zucchini and your onions, and you're going to brine them. And by the way, if you've got a Cuisinart like this, and if you've got the part that goes in, if this metal part starts to get sticky, just run some sandpaper on it. Just take a little bit of sandpaper to the metal part till it feels smooth again. Maybe put a little bit of vegetable oil on it. It'll work a lot better. In terms of the fitting I'm using this one. It's kind of like a cheese grater, same size. Okay, so you're making this relatively fine. The same setting you'd use for making coleslaw. All right, so we got our zucchini in here. And we're just going to take everything in this bowl, which is about 13 cups. I mean, it says 13 cups of shredded zucchini, but on any given day, I might use 13, 14, 12, give or take, right? I basically keep adding it into, this is supposed to be a 14-cup Cuisinart. I don't know if that's true, but I keep adding it and adding it and adding it until it just won't go in anymore. So it's as packed as it can be. That's what I do. All right, so let's get this shredded. All right, so that's about how much I got so far. This is like a full-size mixing bowl. I find when the bowl's flush with zucchini, you've got the right amount. So we're not quite there yet. I got to do these onions too, so I'm going to shred these onions up. It's amazing how fast things go with a proper food processor. If you're going to buy a food processor, I wouldn't go cheap. I'd get a really solid, heavy-duty one. Although it seems like getting good quality stuff, it just seems to get harder and harder every year. All right, so that's probably enough. Probably as much as we can fit in this bowl here. Let me get this thing out of the way. All right, so now I got this big old mixing bowl. For me, the right amount of materials is what this recipe is designed around, this mixing bowl and how much it can take, right? All right, so I got all my zucchini and I got all my onion at this stage. And now what you're going to do is you're going to add your salt to this thing and you're going to brine it, right? That's the idea. You're brining it. All right, so I've got some coarse pickling salt. This is called kosher salt or sel kasher. Kosher, but it doesn't have to be kosher. Just the main thing is that you've got non-iodized pickling salt. You don't want to use iodized salt for this. It won't work. It won't work as well anyway. So you want that coarse pickling salt. So we're going to add 5 tablespoons to this here. And you don't have to be, we're not baking here. You don't have to be perfect with this. 3, 4, 5. All right, so we're brining this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix all the salt in with this shredded up onion and zucchini. That's all from that whole recipe I read to you. All I've done here is added onion and zucchini all shredded up. All right, so what you're going to do is with your hands, you got to work that salt. Look at that beautiful green color. I just love it. You're going to work that salt into the shredded up zucchini. Okay, and this is a tedious process. It takes a bit of time. Right, you might make a bit of a mess doing it. But as you work it in, it's going to shrink a bit. What the salt's going to do is pull the water out of the shredded up zucchini. Right, so you're sort of gathering it from the outside and pushing it towards the inside, right? Outside, inside, push. Right, outside, inside, push. That's what you're doing. So all you're doing is getting everything in this bowl in contact with the salt. And this is getting very wet already because that's what the salt does. So I mean, what you're going to find is that everything's going to shrink a little bit It's going to wilt down a little bit. The little pieces of material are going to go from being kind of stiff and crunchy to more soft, because the moisture is being, right? Salt is hydrophilic. So salt, water is attracted to salt. Salt attracts water to itself. So the salt is pulling the water out of the shredded up zucchini. You can see how wet this, look how wet this is. Look at the water dripping out of that. Wasn't like that a minute ago, right? See the water dripping out? Wasn't like that a minute ago, right? See, this is a brine. This is the important thing to making a relish. I grow so much zucchini that all my I make it ridiculous. My wife can't get enough. At Frank's hot sauce commercial, I put that beep on everything. That's my wife with this zucchini relish. She can't get enough of it. So, and we put it on everything. So step one is just this thorough brining of the shredded up zucchini and the onion. Okay. So now that's, look at the different, look at the consistency. Look how wet it is. Look how much water's in there, right? We've gone from dry to wet just like that by adding 5 tablespoons of salt. Okay. So what I'm going to do, you don't have to do this. It just takes up less room for me. I'm going to take all the zucchini here, transfer it to this pot, put a lid on it, and put it in my fridge. Just because the pot doesn't take up as much room in the fridge, so I got room for other things, right? So I'm going to do that off camera. But that's step one, making zucchini relish. Take your zucchini, take your onion, shred it, brine it, massage it a bit, and then put it in some sort of container. You can just put the bowl like this in the fridge as well, but put it in the fridge and leave it overnight till tomorrow. You can leave it 8 hours minimum. You can leave it till tomorrow, till the next day. You can even leave it a couple days, right? But you don't want to leave it any more than like 48 hours, I would say. Eventually, if you leave it too long, it's going to start to ferment, and it's just not what you're going for in this instance, okay? You're getting a good brining, and that really affects the flavor. And I'm going to take you through the rest of the process tomorrow. So for me, I mix it up, put it in the fridge, and then the next day, I make the relish, all right? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it in this container, put it in the fridge. I'll see you tomorrow. All right, so we're back here, and it's been like about 24 hours. Don't have to wait that long, but you do have to, I'd say, at least 8 hours. Like if you were going to put them in the brine in the morning, you'd make the relish later in the evening. In this case, it's 24 hours since I did that. That's fine. You can even wait an extra day, maybe 48 hours tops. All right. So I got all my brined zucchini and the onion, and I got a strainer here in a bowl. And what we're going to do is we're going to strain out. You got to strain all that liquid out. So that's why, the amount of salt, I mean, sure, we put 5 tablespoons of salt in here, but most of that salt is going to attach to the water, right? So it's not going to be as salty as you might think, because we're straining all that water out. So all this salt water is going to come out of this. And you can use that salt water in your cooking. You can use it for, if you were going to make pasta or something like that. Because, just checking to see if my camera was on, it was actually recording. So yeah, you can use it for that. If you want to, right? Just take all that strained water and, see how it's coming out there? I think I need an extra bowl for that. I'll see here. Extra bowl. There we go. We're gonna have lots of bowls on hand. All right, so we try to strain that out as best we can. Maybe I should do the straining here, since that seems to fit better. Yeah, it's a good fit. All right. All right, so you just push on a little bit, make sure your hands are clean. You're not going to get all the water out, and don't worry about that. Okay, just get as much out as you can. The more you get out, the thicker your relish is going to be. All right, so I'm going to put that strained stuff there. Woo. I'll put this liquid over here. Almost a quart there. And just take the rest of this. I'm going to use this pot to make the zucchini relish. But this is a very easy thing to make. I mean, the most tedious, in my opinion, the most tedious and time-consuming part of this recipe is actually, you know, the canning process, getting everything canned, which I'm not going to show you in this video because there's plenty of videos on how to can things, right? Just a process of, you know, heating, sterilizing, creating a vacuum, that sort of thing, right? All right, that's all I need to do. All right, so I've gotten most of the water out of this. All right, I'll show you what we got here in terms of water. Let's see. I have a measuring cup here somewhere. Show you how much. Show you how much liquid came out of that. All right. Right, so that's 4 cups, right? What would that be in ounces for those people that are, I don't know what it is. It's about 1,000 milliliters, right? 4 cups, whatever that is in ounces. 32 ounces. Sorry, I don't know imperial that well. I don't know ounces other than, you know, making a rum and coke or whatever. So that's how much water, and there's still some here. You can see it sort of pooled. I could probably get a little bit more out. There we go. But that's good enough. You don't have to be too fussy with that, all right? So yeah, you can use this in your cooking, put it in a jar, put it in your fridge, but make sure you use it all in a week or it's going to start to go nasty, right? But anywhere where you'd be using water and needing a bit of salt, you can throw that in there. Know that, you know, all the salt, all 5 tablespoons of salt isn't in the solution. Some of it's in with the zucchini, some of it's here. I don't know, maybe it's half of that, right? So this is, it's salty all right, right? Anyway, put that away. All right, so now we got our shredded up zucchini. You put that back in the bowl without making a mess, hopefully. Okay, that's in the bowl. And one more thing, I think the recipe called for 2 peppers. I just have 1, that's fine. I mean, the peppers are a flavor thing. They're not a preserving thing, right? You're adding peppers because it adds a nice element of flavor to the relish. You could even go without the peppers. Let's say you were all set up to make your relish and you realized you didn't have any peppers and the store was closed, it was too late at night or the weekend, or you just don't feel like going to the store, that's fine. Just don't bother with them, right? And you can run these through the food processor, of course, or right, you can use a knife and just you know, learn how to use a knife and chop them up. I think knife skills are completely lost in our culture. If you want to get quick in the kitchen and you know, people are always, you know, I have a workplace, I work with a lot of people and they're always saying they don't have time to cook, and honestly, I think the knife skills are part of it. Because if you're cooking from scratch, you're processing raw materials, whether that's vegetable or meat or whatever. And you're using your hands and a knife for most of that, whether it's a, you know, meat cleaver like this, or a French chef's knife, or a paring knife, or whatever. So I go through different phases. Sometimes I like using a French chef's knife, and sometimes I like using this big meat cleaver. I kind of like that I have my hand right over top. I think I got this for like $12 at an Asian grocery years ago. It's sharp as a razor. It's a carbon steel knife, so it's not stainless steel. But man, does it hold an edge. And I've probably taken the ends off my fingers a number of times. One thing I love about the meat cleaver is you can use it to pick stuff up, right? It's just so, it's such a practical kitchen tool. All right, there. So we got our, just putting a towel over this so I don't get this wet. So we've got our, all our basic ingredients, and now it's just a question of adding spices and sugar and vinegar and those sorts of elements. So let's start with the big things and work our way to the small things. We need 6 cups. That's right, you heard me. 6 cups of white sugar. So maybe you could go with 5, right? I mean, the sugar is partly flavor, but sugar is also a preservative. I'm hoping I got enough for 6 here. This is all the sugar I got. 3, 4. I got a bunch of sugar on the bottom of this jar that's just threatening to become a sugar avalanche. Let's just loosen that up a bit so I don't have a... I can't remember if I just put 4 or 5 in, so I'm going to put 2 more in, I think. I'd have to go back. Maybe I'll do 1.5 because I can't remember what number I was on. Too much sugar just makes it sweeter, so it's not the end of the world. But yeah, I don't know if I've got 5 in here or 6 or 5.5. But anyway, what you're supposed to have is 6 cups of white sugar. Now, vinegar, 2.5 cups. Right? Sugar helps preserve things, salt helps preserve things, acid helps preserve things. So 2.5 cups. There's 1, and yes, I'm using a dry measuring cup. I'm not baking here. Right? So the fact that it's not exactly right on the money doesn't matter. I'm just going to guesstimate that I've got about half there. Okay. Good enough. All right, get rid of that. Just get a half decent spoon to move this around with. I got one here. This will do. All right, so I got that. Now the spices. We're going to put in, it calls for a 3/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. You can go to a teaspoon. You can use half a teaspoon. You can leave it out if you want. But yeah, nutmeg, you know, if you like that flavor, add more. It calls for half a teaspoon of black pepper. I'm going to go more like 3/4 because I like black pepper. 1.5 teaspoons of celery seed. I'm going to follow that to the letter. Really not relish, or unless you get celery seed. Now I'm eyeballing that, right? I'm just using a dessert spoon, but it's about a teaspoon. But again, you're not baking here. You're not making a souffle. Pepper, celery seed, nutmeg, turmeric. I forgot the turmeric. Calls for 3/4 teaspoon of turmeric. So I'm going to come close to that. That just gives it that nice color that you associate with relish, and I guess whatever magical flavor properties turmeric has. And it also calls for a tablespoon? 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. So I'm just going to do sort of like 2 heaping teaspoons. That's about the same thing. It's about a tablespoon. Eyeballing it. Okay, 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. And that just solves your, the mixture being too wet problem. So now all you got to do is bring this to a boil and then put the lid on and let it simmer for 30 minutes. And then you put it in your jars. I mean, you're going to stir it, you got to stir it, especially when you're trying to get it to boil, or it will, when your burner's on high, if you don't stir it periodically, you can scald it. So keep an eye on it. But bring it to a boil and then turn it down so it'll simmer for 30 minutes. And then you're going to jar it up. That's how I make about a dozen of these worth of zucchini relish every year. And it's just one more thing to do with all your excess relish. This one has a nice sort of lime green color. I like making it with the yellow zucchini as well. It has a sort of beautiful golden color. But that's all a matter of your taste and what you've got available. All right, so that's just got to go in the oven now and come to a boil. But really, you know, the hard part's done. So the next part is just to jar it up. When you jar it up, I like to use these kind of, you know, proper canning jars with the rings and the lids, right? Make sure you've got a pristine lid. Your rings don't have to be perfect because they're really not in contact with the interior of the jar. They're just in contact with the thread. And sometimes these rings, as they get older, they can rust up a little bit. So you don't want the lid to be rusty or anything. Your lid has to be perfect, ideally brand new. But little tip for the ring. If you get a tiny bit of rust inside the thread and you find it's just not smooth when you're screwing it onto your jar, just get a little bit of this waterproof. You can get this in the body section of you know, a store where you, like in Canada here, we go to Canadian Tire. It's where you go to get car stuff and other things, I guess, including mason jars. But if you go to the place where they sell all the stuff to do body work on cars, you can get this waterproof sandpaper. And this is 600 grit. You just hold it with your thumb against the lid and move it around a little bit. Not too much, just enough to take, you know, if you have a bit of little imperfections or rust on the inside, just to take that off. Then you just wash it off. And it should go on your jar nice and smooth. Anyway, that's the gist of it. That's how I make my zucchini relish. The next step is to just, you know, once it's simmered for 30 minutes, bring it to a boil, simmer for 30 minutes, jar it up, and can it. Another good little thing to have is one of these little funnel thingies. That helps to do your canning without making as much of a mess. Hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com, and until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden and in your kitchen. Thanks for watching.